Is there anybody else who would like to introduce themselves?
Mataji, we can start.
Okay, Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Welcome to Bhakti Sangha conference call. Today we are fortunate to have her guest Jayasri Mataji to enlightening us on the topic of glories of Lord Ramachandra. Before I hand over call to you, I would like to hand over call to Mother Lalita for reading brief introduction of Mataji. Hare Krishna, Lalita Mataji, Tanvat Pranam, all goes to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Today we are very fortunate to have amidst us our great Jayasri Mataji, disciple of Srila Prabhupada. She met him in 1969 in Hawaii. There was no ISKCON temple in Hawaii at that time. She was barely 20 years old, and she was looking for God in earnest. Her sincere prayer to the Lord was, please send me to someone who knows you. On a bakery window one day, she saw a handwritten invitation, chant while you can, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, and she immediately asked her friend to take her there. Upon their arrival at the home of the devotee's mother, Srila Prabhupada beckoned Jayasri and her friend to come in. They listened to him uninterrupted as Srila Prabhupada clearly explained so many things she had always wondered about. She said it was like meeting her best friend, and he had all the answers to her deep questions. Only a couple of months later, she received initiation. She received her second initiation from Srila Prabhupada in October 1974. Her Grace Jayasri Mataji later moved to New Vrindavan and served the deities there, though she still travels to other places as a part of her multiple devotional service, but still her main core services rest in New Vrindavan. She has served ISKCON and Srila Prabhupada steadily. Throughout the decades of service, she has held many roles. She is a mother with many valuable insights into helping young people without ignoring their free will. She has acted as a temple president, treasurer, temple board member, head pujari. She is an empowered shopper for their lordships and their altar. She still dresses the deities so expertly, and it is a regular service for her. She was told to preach by Srila Prabhupada, and she has continued through present, giving tours and distributing Srila Prabhupada's books at the New Vrindavan Palace whenever it is open. She is an expert seamstress who is fondly remembered by all for being the one who stitched the saffron coat for Srila Prabhupada. He wore that coat lovingly for many years. During the pandemic, she has sewn face masks for all the devotees so that they can be safe while serving. When her Grace Jayasri speaks about Krishna consciousness, her deep realizations are presented with such sincerity and honesty that one is immediately affected by her deep love and dedication to Srila Prabhupada. It is such an honor to hear from her today, and we look forward to many more classes. Thank you, Mata.
Thank you, Lalita Mataji, for reading introduction of Mataji. Hare Krishna, Jayasri Mataji, Dhanvat Pranam, always to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call and giving your association to us this morning and enlightening on the topic of glories of Lord Ramachandra. Now I would like to hand over call to you, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Dhanvat Pranam.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was a great big introduction. Well, just to clarify, there was a temple in Hawaii at the time. It had just been established by Gorsindar. It was only a month or so old. It was out in the country, and Prabhupada had come for a visit. And that is where I did meet him, by Krishna's grace. As far as traveling and preaching or traveling to multiple places, I only travel out of New Vrindavan in the winter time to get away from the winter. And I usually go to Alachua, where I do have a small house. And a few years ago, I did go to Hawaii, which is where I'm from, and the temple I helped start. And I stayed there for the winter. But I just hang around New Vrindavan and do whatever needs to be done to keep the project going as from my little ability. So thank you so much. So good morning, everyone. Glad that everyone could make it. And I'm going to do a little slideshow. It's really not much, but I thought it would be nice. And I'm going to do a verse also. So I'm just going to sing the Jayaramadava and the usual introduction to the Bhagavatam. if you can tolerate my old cracking voice. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvajakacharya My grace is the Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada teacher Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvajakacharya My grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur Ananta Karta Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Jai Prem Shri Kala Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Sham Radha Krishna Govardhan Jai Vrindavan Dham Kitai Navadvip Dham Kitai Sangamaya Kitai Jai Jamunamaya Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Srimati Tulsi Devi Sama Veda Bhakti Devi Ki Jai All glories to the All glories to the devotees All glories So let's see if we can get a better vision there. A little better. So we are going to put our toe into Lord
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Mataji.
Oh,
Oh, Hare Krishna Mataji. The volume has become very low. We can barely hear you.
okay, is that better?
Still low.
Still low.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Well, give me a second. Let's see what we can do. I definitely am not a tech person here. I'm sure it doesn't take much, but how about that? Is that better?
Yes, little better.
A little better? It's up all the way. Maybe I just don't have a good microphone. How about that? Is that better?
Yes, Mataji. Now it's good.
Okay, I guess maybe I'm just too far away from it. Okay, we are going to put our toe in the pastimes of Ramachandra, our little toe, because they are so vast. And this is from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is the 9th canto, 10th chapter, text number 2. And And let's see, I am terrible at Sanskrit. Taspi Bhagavan Esa Shakshad Brahmanandyo Hari Sam Sena Charat Jagat Purvatam Paritasriha Rama Lakshman Bharata Sritugana Iti Samjayan Tasya of him, Maharaj Dasarath, Api also. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so all of them. Shakshad, directly, Brahma Mayam, the Supreme Parabrahma, the Absolute Truth. Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Amsena, by an expansion of a plenary portion. Chaturdeha, by fourfold expansions. Agat, accepted. Paratavam, sonhood. Paritaha, being prayed for. Suraya, by demigods. Rama, Lord Ramachandra. Lakshmana, Lord Lakshman. Bharata, Lord Bharat. Shritugrana, the Lord Shritugrana, iti, thus, Samjaya, the different names. Translation. Being prayed for by the demigods, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth Himself, directly appeared with His expansion and expansions of the expansion. Their holy names were Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, and Sritugrana. These celebrated incarnations thus appeared in four forms as the son of Maharaj Dasarath. The purport, Lord Ramachandra and his brothers Lakshman, Bharat, and Sritughna are all Vishnu Tattva, not Jiva Tattva. The Supreme Personality of Godhead expands into many, many forms. Although they are one and the same, Vishnu Tattva has many forms and incarnations. As confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, the Lord is situated in many forms, such as Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, and Sritughna, and these forms may exist in any part of His creation. All of these forms exist permanently, eternally, as individual personalities of Godhead, and they resemble many candles, all equally powerful. Lord Ramachandra, Lakshman, Bharat, and Sritughna, who, being the Vishnu Tattva, are all equally powerful. They became the sons of Maharaj Dasarath in response to prayers by the demigods. Therefore, although there are many so-called Ramayans and histories of Lord Ramachandra's activities, some of them are not actually authoritative. Sometimes Lord Ramachandra's activities are described in terms of one's own imagination, speculations, or material sentiments. But the characteristics of Lord Ramachandra should not be handled as something imaginary. While describing the history of Lord Ramachandra, Sukadeva Goswami told Maharaj Parikshit, "You have already heard about the activities of Lord Ramachandra." And Prabhupada goes on to say, apparently, therefore, 5,000 years ago, there were many Ramayans or histories of Lord Ramachandra's activities. And there are still many. But we must select only those books written by Tattvadarshis, not the books of so-called scholars who claim knowledge only on the basis of doctrine. So, Nama Om Krishna Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Shri Mati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gorbani Pacharane Nirvise Sasanibari Pashachadishta. Om Ganatimirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurunilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. We're born in the darkness of ignorance, but our spiritual masters kindly opening our eyes with their torchlight of knowledge, so we offer our respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such spiritual masters. So we are very fortunate today. And I am going to start a little slideshow, I hope. So let's see if it works. See if we can share the screen. Okay, do you see the slideshow?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, so you don't see me, you just see pictures of Ramachandra.
No, we also.
You see me too?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I was hoping you wouldn't see me. Are the pictures small or big?
It's normal, Mataji. It is good.
Okay, I'm trying to make it. I guess there's no way so you don't see me. So do you see me still or you just see the slideshow?
We see both of them, Mataji.
Okay, all right. Well, I was hoping you didn't have to see me. All right, so Lord Ramachandra is not someone we hear about every day. Lord Ramachandra is one of the appearances of the Lord, and he appeared many, many years ago. And his pastimes are very noble. Lord Ramachandra has a certain disposition, as opposed to Krishna. Krishna is coming as a naughty boy in Vrindavan. He's killing so many demons and he's having wonderful pastimes with his friends. And then we have Lord Chaitanya, and he's coming our way as a renunciate, as a wonderful example for our day and age. Because the world is so close right now. Everything is close because of the media. We can see things on the other side of the world, whereas in past days, nobody could see anything unless there was a photograph taken and it was mailed in an envelope. And even before that, you couldn't even do that because people couldn't even take pictures. But now you can show a video of someone exactly where you are at the moment. So the world has become very small. So in that happening, the living entities are mad after so many things. We want 2 houses, 4 cars. We want to go shopping at Walmart. We want to buy so many things. And so what did Lord Chaitanya show? He showed renunciation, right? Jesus showed renunciation. The great souls all have showed renunciation. So that's our present incarnation. In the past, Ramachandra, he was a great king and he was very noble in nature. He only took one wife. He took a vow. He would only take one wife. His character that we hear about over and over again was his kindness, his compassion, his ability to rule a kingdom and have everyone satisfied and peaceful. He was a great warrior. He kept the enemies at bay. He killed Ravana. He befriended the monkeys, and one of his greatest devotees is Hanuman. So Lord Ram, he had his own particular pastimes. And when I met Srila Prabhupada, that was one of the stories he told me, actually. He said, there was once a great king, his name was Ramachandra, and in his kingdom, everything was perfect. He said there was no famine. He said there was no bad weather. And he said one time there was a man who came to him whose son had died before him. And he held Ramachandra responsible because it was the duty of the ruler to make sure that the citizens were fully taken care of, all of their needs for their housing, their food, their medicine, for everything. And that this man's son had died before him was unheard of. And this man held Lord Ram responsible. So I think with that example, Srila Prabhupada was just giving me an overview of what a great leader should be. He didn't tell me much more of the story. He just told me that. So other than that, I don't remember him talking about like Krishna's pastimes or anything, but he did tell me the story of Lord Ram. So I'm going to read a little bit about the birth of Lord Ram. It's kind of a summary. Dasarath, his desire fulfilled, dwelt happily in Ayodhya, waiting the birth of his sons. The Brahmins and the kings who had assembled for the sacrifice left for their various abodes, sent on their way with kind words and gifts by the emperor. So this is when the king had been given a benediction to have children. He hadn't had children. He got this benediction, and each one of his queens was given a part of this benediction. So as the seasons passed, then at a time when favorable stars were visible in the heavens, Kausalya gave birth to a son named Ram. Though Ram was the Lord of creation, Kausalya saw him simply as her own dear child. She held him tight to her bosom, overwhelmed with motherly affection, and unable to recognize his divinity. Coming out of the delivery room, Kausalya shone brilliantly with a baby boy who had eyes like lotus petals. So in this particular pastime, Lord Ram's mother is, of course, like Jasoda, unaware that her son is the personality of Godhead. And I've read stories of Ram as a child and I couldn't find them, but he was just a beautiful child and he was very good-natured. I was actually surprised when I could find it. Must have been a Ramayana that I had at one time that it had the details of Lord Ram's birth, because I couldn't find anything about his pastimes when he was very young. Next, a son named Bharat was born from Kaikeyi, and from Sumitra, who had received 2 portions of ambrosia, were twin sons, Lakshman and Shatrugna. All of these boys resembled celestials, and they seemed to blaze with their splendor. I'm sorry, it seems that is that a mistake or something? Okay. Well, anyway. In the heavens, the Gandharvas, the heavenly musicians, began to sing melodiously, while the Asparas danced. Kettle drums resounded in the sky, and showers of flowers fell upon the earth. In Ayodhya, the streets quickly became crowded with rejoicing citizens. Minstrels, bards, and chanters of Vedic hymns gathered in every quarter, glorifying the birth of Lord Ram and his brothers. The city, decorated all over with colorful flags and garlands, looked beautiful. So we see also in the pastimes of Krishna that when Krishna came back to Dwarka, how the citizens decorated the roads. There was rose water and flowers and garlands and music. And these pastimes are so inspiring, actually, because nowadays people don't do that so much. When someone visits or when a child is born, I mean, there is something, you have balloons and, maybe a little cake or something. But when the whole city is decorated for beautiful pastimes, spiritual pastimes, this is a very unheard of thing, at least in America. Probably in some parts of the world that are less materialistic, you'll see different pastimes. I know in India, you will see that. When Prabhupada went to, Surat. When Prabhupada went to India, to Surat, the whole town came out. They're devotees of Krishna. The town came out and there was flowers strung and garlands and incense and such a wonderful array of respect and greeting these devotees who had come with Srila Prabhupada. It's such a nice thing. I mean, New Vrindavan, we need to do more of this, I think. So King Dasarath, overwhelmed with happiness, gave a large heap of shining jewels to the Brahmins and arranged for a feast to be distributed to his entire kingdom. So where do we see that happening in America? I guess it's not something that happens. That due to some, even say the presidency, where do we see the new president or administrator of any city giving a whole feast to everyone in their city? Doesn't happen. Anyway, these Vedic habits and etiquette are so beautiful. Okay, Vasista joyfully performed the name-giving ceremony and all of the other rites of passage for the brothers. Of all the brothers, Ram was especially glorious. His attractive body had the hue of a celestial emerald. Dressed in the finest silk and adorned with golden ornaments, he captured the mind of all who saw him. Ram was devoted to his father's service. He took delight in the science of archery and quickly mastered the arts of horseback and elephant riding, as well as the various methods of driving a chariot. Lakshman was deeply attached to his elder brother Ram from his infancy. He was like a second half of Ram, and he pleased him in every way. Unless Lakshman was present, Ram would neither sleep nor eat. Whenever Ram went out to the forest to hunt, Lakshman would follow at his heels, guarding him on all sides. And we see when the pastime goes forward and when Ram is banished to the forest, who is the first one to say that he's coming? That's Lakshman. He was always with Ram. He protected Ram and Sita in the forest. He was his, like it says, second body. He was his constant companion. Shatrughna was just as dear to Bharat, and these two brothers were also inseparable. Dasarath felt as pleased with his 4 sons as Brahma feels with the 4 gods presiding over the 4 quarters of the universe. Those princes were tigers amongst men, yet they were modest, they were wise, far-sighted, and glorious in every way. They were attached to their studies and soon became well-versed in all aspects of kingship. So here we see the sons of the king. They were trained from the time they were young, and they learned the arts along with humility and grace and compassion and care for the citizens. They learned the arts of warfare, charioteering, riding elephants, horses, protecting the kingdom. They were the first ones on the battlefield. And Prabhupada many times points out that in the present day and age, the leaders of our kingdoms, our countries, are never on the battlefield. They are never are so determined to protect the citizens that they themselves fight. Unfortunately, the way Kali Yuga works, the leaders of the countries, they send the young men off to war, and they're killed by the thousands everywhere. So here we see that Lord Ram, he was the ideal king. Prabhupada always refers to him as the ideal king. When it was time for battle, Ram was there, and his brothers were there. This is the noble nature of a king or a leader. They protect the citizens on every side. The way the world is right now, the certain small portion of the population has all the wealth, and the rest of the population is either struggling to make ends meet or so far below poverty that they hardly have a roof over their head. So what kind of leadership is this? Kali Yuga is so far from, what is it called? Ramraj, the kingdom of God. We have the kingdom of Kali at hand right now, which is unfortunate. So Lord Ram, I was looking, he has, like Krishna, there's 1,000 names of Krishna. There's 1,000 names of Ram too, but unfortunately I couldn't pronounce most of them. So I kind of put them aside. But the qualities of Lord Ram was invincible. Right? Could fight and win with Lord Ram. When Vishwamitra Muni came and took the young prince, Dasarath was just heartbroken. Dasarath, he couldn't tolerate that his young son, who was not fully trained, who had never been in a battle, that Vishwamitra was going to take his beloved young son to fight these demons that were bothering the sacrifice. And Dasarath was fainting, and he was begging Vishwamitra, please, don't take my son. I will go, my army will go, we will defeat these demons. But Vishwamitra knew who Ram was. He knew he was the personality of God. And Vishwamitra himself could have destroyed these demons. But because he was doing the sacrifice, he didn't want to engage in the killing. So he took Lord Ram as a young man. And of course, Ram killed these demoniac forces and then returned. But he was young at the time. And then when the whole situation, right before he was going to be king, his father was going to retire. Ram was, of course, the choice to run the kingdom. He was the oldest son. He was the top son. He had all the qualities and the whole kingdom loved him. They were waiting for this to happen. And what happened? The whole situation with Kaikeyi happened. And Ram was banished to the forest by his father, who was totally unwilling to do this. But what did Ram do? With his beautiful nature and his quality of respect for his father and his noble nature, he said, Father, I'm going. I will go to the forest. And he started to get ready to go. But then, of course, Lakshman, his sidekick or his closest friend, he said, Ram, I'm coming. And Sita also. She was the chaste wife. She would have been miserable without Ram. So she said, I'm coming too. Put on the tree bark and, they went off into the forest. So Ram's life in the forest was so simple and peaceful, and they lived in the forest with the trees and the sages, and they lived a totally different lifestyle. But then, of course, as the pastimes go on, Sita was stolen by the evil Ravana, and he did it by intrigue. And what happened? Ram and Lakshman. Ram was just heartbroken. Sita was gone, and he didn't know what to do. He didn't know where to go. And then they were looking, and there was Jatayu, and he gave them the direction. It was Ravana. Ravana had taken Sita. And so Ram proceeded, gathering the monkey soldiers. And as the story goes on, of course, Lord Ram defeated Ravana. The story of Ram is really a long and beautiful story. And there's so many different personalities that speak on the pastimes of Ram. And some of it can be confusing if you hear part of it, like Sita being sent to Valmiki's ashram when she's pregnant. It's like, oh, well, wait a minute, this is not supposed to happen. But knowing the nature of Ram, we have to know that there must be more to the story. And so some of the great personalities in our movement have studied the pastimes and can give you answers to all of these queries about things that are a stumbling block in our understanding of the Lord's pastimes. And personalities, Radha Swami, you have Gauranga, there's so many different personalities that have studied these pastimes from many angles, from many scriptures and scriptural references. And I actually really like listening to them because it puts the picture together. Prabhupada in the Srimad Bhagavatam does not write a whole lot about Lord Ramachandra. It is there, it is somewhat summarized, but Prabhupada was trying to finish the whole book, or the whole set of Bhagavatams. But there are ways to hear more about Ram. And there's beautiful pictures of these beautiful pastimes. Prabhupada was so amazing. He came. What would have happened had Prabhupada come as a rich man, coming over on a first-class ticket, on an airplane, staying at a big hotel, when he got here to preach in the West? Would it have had the same effect? Absolutely not. Prabhupada came over with the least of everything, a bag of cereal, books, lots of books, and so little money. He came over as almost as a beggar. But look at what happened. And because of the way Srila Prabhupada came and the way he started preaching, who did he preach to? He didn't preach to the Fords and the, people that are in the upper class, going to their fancy houses, living, like a king and trying to give some knowledge. Prabhupada came with nothing, sat in a park with the young hippies, and you would have to know the nature of the hippies in those days. It was like a circus almost. All these young people, hundreds of young people, had left home. I myself, I left home. My father was a manager of Dun and Bradstreet, had a house overlooking the ocean. We had a Cadillac, we had a sports car. I wasn't lacking anything but my spiritual life. And I left home. I became a hippie and was looking for something. I was looking for something. And there was all these people wandering in the streets of San Francisco, New York, everywhere, Hawaii. They were gathering together, trying to get answers, trying to find a way of life, away from the war of the civilization of America, away from the 9-to-5 job. Okay, because the parents were going to work. My father would go to work at whatever, 8 in the morning, 6 in the morning, come back at 5, have a martini, and then they'd watch the football game on the weekend. It's like, what is this? What is life for? Is this all there is? So the young people were dissatisfied. They were dissatisfied with the way things were. And they hit the streets in thousands. And it was perfect timing. Krishna did it perfectly. Prabhupada came over in such simplicity, because if he had come over in wealth and stature, they never would have accepted him. But the way he came was perfect. He came and he was like one of them, but somebody who had so much knowledge and so much purity and so much bliss. And just to be around him was like walking into the spiritual world. You felt the spiritual world around Srila Prabhupada. He was emanating love. He was emanating knowledge. And he did not deviate from his principles or his purity or his schedule of rising early, chanting, all the things he kept intact, but at the same time, he was living amongst these young people. It was perfectly done. And from that, these young people found a leader, which they were looking for. Who doesn't want a leader? Who doesn't want somebody that can give you more than you have in the direction that you're looking for? And it was so different from their teachers and their parents' example of life. It was just perfect. The simplicity. Prabhupada's, his desk was his trunk, right? He slept on the floor. He didn't have a 4-poster big bed. These were things, these young people were sleeping on the floor. They were sleeping with nothing, or maybe on a mattress. They were sleeping 20 people in an apartment. They were community. And Prabhupada came and just became part of their community and gave a higher lifestyle with the simplicity. And then he started sending them all over. How empowered they were. They were so empowered. You know, you could go and preach to somebody in the condition that they were in with nothing, and just bring thousands of people, because they were looking for this knowledge. They were looking for this purity. They were looking for, people are looking for an example of life. Look at the disastrous society we're living in. The ecology has gone to hell. The habits of the people have gone to hell. The crime and the unrest is just over the top. And then you have this small Swami coming into the picture, giving a whole different way of life with different standards to live. And people are amazed. I did a tour yesterday at the palace, and it was actually all Westerners. In the second group, there was only 2 people. It was a husband and wife. And I could tell she had a spiritual desire, a spiritual background. But she was very simple. So as we went through the palace, we went into Prabhupada's room at the palace, where he's sitting at his desk and he's surrounded by his books. And she just said, what was he teaching? What was he teaching? Because you tell, when you give a tour, you tell about Prabhupada and his life, how he came to America. And she was so interested. What was he teaching? And so I just presented it according to, I figured she was Christian. So I presented it in connection with the Christian teachings. And she just was all ears. She was fascinated. And that connection between what she already knew through Christianity and what Prabhupada was teaching, you know, it's so profound that it gives people another step to go forward. From my experience being raised Catholic, maybe it's because my family was not so religious, you know, that we go to church sometimes. But, you know, to have people that have a lifestyle of devotion, that's what some people are looking for. And when you give them a tour, I also gave these young people a tour of the temple the other day. They came in, you know, one had green hair, and, you know, they were just young, kind of hippie-ish kind of young people. And so I started taking them around. And one had been to New Vrindavan before, but the other one hadn't. So how do you present Lord Jagannath? Lord Jagannath, he's this little statue kind of form with big eyes and no hands, and, you know, there's Subhadra with no hands and big eyes. How do you explain? So, you know, I gave them some idea about who Krishna was. And then I took them to Jagannath's altar and I told them the story of how they were carved and why they look the way they do. And they were just thrilled. We went to every altar, the 6 Goswamis, and we went to Radha Ramachandra. I told them, Hari Krishna, this is Hari, this is Krishna. And then Lord Chaitanya. And then, of course, we went to Lord Nrsingadev, and I told them the whole story of that, how the son was saved and how Lord Nrsingadev was God and how he came to be in that form. And they were just so happy to hear, because I fit in ecology, the ecology of the planet. Prabhupada was extremely simple. Prabhupada was so simple. With someone who had so many followers and so much money at his hand, he could have had the best cooks in India coming and cooking for him. We could have paid them. They could have made samosas and puris and so much every day for Prabhupada. He could have lived like a king. But what did Prabhupada do? He had his cooks who were sometimes, they were his servants. And they were many times basically untrained when they came to cook for him in cooking. Some of the men hardly knew how to make a chapati or what to speak of cook a sabji. But those were the people Prabhupada had cooking for him. He wanted the devotion. He wanted to train his disciples. He wanted to live a simple life. That was Prabhupada's own example. And that's how things move forward. Prabhupada kept his simple living throughout his life. He could have stayed at 5-star hotels. He chose to live, in a grass hut in Mayapur. His facility here in New Vrindavan, he stayed up at Old Vrindavan. Prabhupada kept it simple. And this was the glory of Prabhupada's life. Let's see what time it is. I'm going to grab my phone. I'm not sure what time it is. Okay, 8 o'clock. So about 15 more minutes before we can take some questions.
Hare Krishna. Mataji. Thank you. Very beautiful class and wonderful presentation with beautiful pictures. And devotee, I'm requesting devotees, if anybody have any questions on realization, please go ahead.
I don't really want to end early if it seems like it's a bit early.
हरे कृष्ण माता जी अनंत कोटि दंडवत प्रणाम श्री राम लक्ष्मण सीता रानी की जय श्री राम लक्ष्मण सीता रानी हनुमान जी की जय श्री धाम वृंदावन धाम की जय थैंक यू माता जी how nicely you prepared the slideshow and explaining all the leelas special mercy of Srila Prabhupada and how much you hard work to give a Krishna conscious. It is lesson for all of us that we should not how many difficulties came in the path of bhakti. We should हमें हिम्मत नहीं हारनी है because the Srila Prabhupada blessing is earth and we have to work hard to read Srila Prabhupada book and serve Vaishnava. We learn a nice lesson from you, Mataji. Ananta Koti Dandavat Pranam. Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev, Shri Radha Gopinath ki jai. When you are explaining that person is accepting Krishna conscious, why? Because you are so sincere in Krishna Bhakti, Mataji. It is a best example for all of us. Ananta Koti Dandavat Pranam to your Siva. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, thank you. I mean, I have to say that my life in Krishna consciousness has been so fortunate. Somehow or other, when I met Srila Prabhupada, he was like I had been looking for, the person I had been looking for, the connection I had been looking for, the lifestyle I had been looking for. I mean, to give up everything, which is what the young people of the day had done. We had nothing, the young people at that time, they didn't have houses and jobs and cars. We hitchhiked. I used to hitchhike all over the place. I didn't have a car. I had nothing. We didn't want anything. And Prabhupada just put the picture together that it's not that you don't want anything, you want to live a simple life. And don't ever be afraid to do what Prabhupada did. Prabhupada gave up everything and went on to serve Krishna. To simplify our life, to instead of trying to get more and more, a bigger house, more cars, more money for whatever, instead of going that way, to simplify our life and open our home up to devotees like Shambhagori and her husband. I traveled down to Florida in the winter time to get away because of my health, the harsh winter. I did stay here this winter and said I will never do it again. But I usually travel. I drive down to Florida to Alachua. And the place I stop is Shamagori's house in Charlotte. And it's often that someone else was there right before me. And they set up programs. You know, we can have a big house, we can have so much facility, but to use it to spread Krishna consciousness. Her husband builds altars. They open their home. They cater prasadam. There's so many ways we can implement. Not that we want to live on the street or we're going to give up everything and become a traveling mendicant. Probably not going to happen. But there's ways to engage ourselves to promote Krishna consciousness and assist the preaching of others. Of course, we can give money, and that's always needed. You know, that's just how New Vrindavan runs. Without the donations of, especially during the COVID, when we've, our finances because of the pilgrims aren't coming so much last year. Giving donations to projects that are already going is very important, definitely important. But we want to simplify our lifestyle also. I mean, even if we live in the kingdom, we can still live simply. I remember hearing different stories about different saints that actually were kings or princes, and they lived in the kingdom. But like Ram, his kingdom and Prahlad Maharaj's kingdom was all for the citizens. They would exhaust their treasury for the benefit of the citizens in general. Building lakes and gardens and roads and wells, and the world is lacking. If we have money to spend our money to, even if we feed the homeless, we set up a place to feed the homeless, especially during the COVID times. There are people that are not having food during this time, children. So we can figure out a way to follow the footsteps. Prabhupada himself set up the Food for Life, like in Mayapur. No one within a 20-mile radius or something like that of the temple, he said, should go hungry. These are things that we can do, but at the same time, live a simple life. We don't need to try and increase our personal opulence. And living a simple life in New Vrindavan, of course, at different times, years ago, it was really simple here. I wasn't here, I was in Hawaii, fortunately, because I don't think I could have lived the way the devotees lived here back in the beginning. We lived a similar way in Hawaii. We had one house and we all lived in it. My room had 12 girls in it. We were on bunk beds, triple bunk beds, as a matter of fact. And we were out on the street every day preaching, distributing magazines, going door to door, preaching to people about Krishna. And so many people were coming, Westerners. Now we have kind of a lack of Westerners. The temples are being frequented by the Indian devotees. But I think it's very important to preach to the Westerners. New Vrindavan went out, due to a couple of devotees, went out to Pittsburgh yesterday. They've been going out every week, just 12 of them, with mridanga kartals, set up a little book table. They probably made cookies and distributed them and just go out and chant and preach. And they were sending us pictures, all these different pictures. This guy with a book and this girl with a book and this woman with their kids with a book. It's still very possible, and it's important to get out on the streets and just share. And in New Vrindavan, sometimes we get a lot of young people. There's still a lot of young people that are not liking the society the way it is. They want to live off the land. There's a girl that comes here. She's actually a Harvard graduate, and she just set up a program with Radhanath Maharaj. It was called Eco Bhakti. Her name is Allegra. She's not initiated. She came and spent the whole winter here doing her schoolwork remotely. But, you know, there's a lot of young people with the vision of using the ecology in a different way than the unfortunate poison being sprayed all over our food and, you know, mass gardening. You know, there's a whole culture of young people that are looking for the connection to live more off the land. It's important. Prabhupada wanted that, and he wanted that for New Vrindavan. So recently we've put in several gardens, like the school. Our school now has a huge garden in it. One devotee, Tapapunj, he's a gardener, and he's helped connect us with a local group called the Ohio Valley Collective, something like that, Grow Ohio Valley. They started putting gardens in all over Wheeling, in the schools, under the freeways. They started this probably 10 years ago. Now they have a store, a co-op, and it's a movement. There's a lot of young people into this mentality. And if we live simply ourselves and are vegetarian, of course, and cook our food or grow our food and cook what we grow, we have high tunnels going now here. We've got five high tunnels. And I was just totally amazed, actually. Let me show you. This is the celery from our high tunnel. Look at that beautiful celery. I mean, I know you can grow celery because you buy it in the store, but this was grown here. And I've got all this, there's carrots and beets and kale and Swiss chard and all in these high tunnels. You know, to grow your own food is such a big thing. It's so good for you to get down into the earth and grow things. Prabhupada himself would travel when he would take a walk in Hawaii, and he would point out all the different herbs and flowers that you could eat. He said, I would have to find the quote, but there is one. Anything that's grown by you or grown in the soil of the temple is 1,000 times better than anything you can buy. So we don't know what the economy is going to do. We're hoping it stays solid, but to learn how to grow things is really an important thing. So I've had a garden for some years. I just expanded it. This is I don't know if you can see it. I should get to the point where I can see myself. 1 second here.
Mataji, Hare Krishna, if you can stop your share screen, then we can see you big.
Okay, stop the share the screen. Let me find that. I made my screen big. Okay. Here we are.
And there is a, on the top, it comes like stop share.
Yeah, I just have to get to the point where I'm.
Yeah, I can do that from my side, Mataji. No worries. I did it.
Okay. All right, go ahead. Yeah, I had just found it when you said that. Thank you. So here is my, see that? Those are my plants. And I just started that's a grow light, and I have a heating pad underneath. It's a plant heating pad. And I started all these little plants for my garden. See, I've got my zucchinis coming up, my winter squash, my kale. Anyway, I love doing a garden. I feel it's really good for you. Anyway, so I mean, everyone has a house generally, maybe not, maybe you have an apartment. I'm in an apartment, but I have a garden still. So, I mean, I know it's not the topic of Ramachandra, but still, Prabhupada was into people growing their own food and living simply. And we don't know what the economy is going to do, but it's always good for our children and for ourselves to know where our food comes from. Anyway, I don't know how I got on that topic. I guess because I was talking about Prabhupada and his simplicity in his preaching. But to stay simple or to go in that direction is good for us. We don't want to go in the direction of society. It's not healthy. And we want to do as much preaching as possible. All right, that was a long answer. All right, I think it is time now. So if anyone does have any questions or additions, hope that I didn't offend anyone, hope that I offered something of value along the way of my rambling.
Thank you so much, Mataji. If no one have any further questions, we can end the call here. Once again, thank you so much, Mataji, and very enlightening class today. We are very grateful to you and we look forward association again and again in the future. Let's pay obeisance to Mataji and all assembled devotees. Vanchakalpatarubhya kripa sindhubhya patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jayasri Mataji ki jai. All assembled devotees ki jai.
Thank you. We'll see you next time, everybody. Hare Krishna. Chant and be happy.
Thank you so much for your wonderful and wonderful introduction by Lalita Mataji. We go.
Hare Krishna Mataji Dandavat Pranam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Shamagori.
Hare Krishna,
Thank you,
Mataji.
I miss your sweet paratas.
Yes. Totally.
I'll be coming in November unless I go to Hawaii.
Wow. Please come, Mataji. Please come.
I'll let you know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Mataji. Bye bye, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.